India has a new army chief at a time when there have been unprecedented tensions with Pakistan over the last couple of months. Certainly, we've seen a hot line of control and a hot international border, at least parts of it. General Rawat, who comes in as the army chief, comes in on the basis, to a large extent, of his extensive experience in Jammu and Kashmir and being fully aware of the situation on the line of control and all the dynamics that exist in that part of India. And of course, you're also head of the Indian Army, which brings with it so many more responsibilities. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV this evening.
Thank you for calling me and inviting me here. It's my pleasure.
Sir, surgical strikes is now a lexicon. Everybody uses these two words, surgical strike, surgical strike. We intended to achieve something. We believe we've achieved something in those attacks. But do you believe that even in the future something like this might be a possibility?
Well, the so-called surgical strikes was more of messaging. It was a message that had to be communicated, that if there are terrorist bases across and they continue to disrupt the situation on our side of the line of control, disrupting not only the military but also the civilian population, then we have a right to take action against the terrorists who are being supported from across by the adversary.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that we would send soldiers across. We can hit our enemies, those who threaten us, in so many different ways. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, I would like to give out how we would like to address the adversary across or the terrorist infrastructure across. There are various means available to us. The demonstration of the surgical strike was only one such mean. We are working on other methodologies and we are ready.
Would you like to share what you're talking about? What do you mean? I talked about hitting in terms of military action, in terms of methodology, or are you looking at other means as well?
Well, it's always good to keep the adversary guessing.
Right.
And I would say yes, military means, non-military means, and other actions that can be taken. Yes.
So when the
or a combination of all these.
When the strikes actually took place, you would have been monitoring it moment by moment. Tell us something that we've not heard of before, the run-up to the surgical strikes. When the orders were passed, what exactly was happening at military headquarters, at the level of the court? How were you in on all of the action that was actually taking place on the ground?
Well, a lot of planning and preparation went into this. The secrecy had to be maintained, not just for the secrecy for the plans that were to be executed, but for the safety of our troops who were required to execute these operations, because their lives couldn't have been jeopardized had the plans leaked out. The credit for this, I would say, goes to my predecessor, who had planned these operations very well, and the Northern Army commander, and finally, of course, the troops on ground who executed the operations. It was a very well coordinated plan. The plans were kept on need-to-know basis. Extensive preparation was carried out, and then the operations were executed.
And it was monitored real time, sir?
It was being monitored real time.
And you could actually see the attacks taking place from where you were?
Yes, we could.
Sir, let's talk a little bit about what happened a few weeks back when the Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called us, his Indian counterpart, our DGMO over here, and since then there has been a lull in the fighting along the line of control. Do you believe that this is just a lull, or do you believe that this is some sort of a new peace?
Well, maintaining peace and tranquility along the line of control has been our endeavor. We have a ceasefire in place between the two countries. So effort is always made to make sure that this ceasefire continues and lasts. However, at times what happens is, because of the infiltration by the terrorists who attempt to come onto our side, there is some support which is given by the forces on the other side of the line of control, and this leads to escalation. And then, of course, when the escalation takes place, there is bound to be retaliation from our side, and gradually this starts escalating. And especially when you suffer casualties, the escalation goes on to a higher pitch. But then there is always an effort, because whenever escalation goes on to a higher pitch, it is not so much the military that gets affected. It is the civilian population living close to the line of control on both sides that gets affected. So it is for the safety and security of the civilian population. They have cattle with them, there are young children, women, schools which get disrupted, everything gets disrupted. So it is for their safety and security that you have to bring the situation back to normalcy. What has now happened is we hope that this ceasefire will last. So long as the terrorists are not given direct support and terrorists do not attempt to infiltrate to carry out the kind of action that they have, we are hopeful that the ceasefire will continue.
Right.
But if this kind of activity continues and the terrorists again start infiltrating and they get support from across, then we also reserve the right to retaliate.
Sir, let's talk a little bit about the circumstances in which you became chief. You were picked on the basis of your extensive experience in Jammu and Kashmir, among other things. But in the process, there were 2 officers who were superseded. Neither of these officers has chosen to retire or to resign. Isn't this exemplary in a sense that for them it's not the post, but it is working for the army and the country that's most important? What do you have to say about that decision, that choice that they have made?
Yeah, firstly, whatever the decision has been made by the government. No individual can influence a decision. If it was that easy, then everybody would be running up behind the government and getting themselves appointed in the places that they wish to get appointed. It doesn't happen that way. The decision has been made by the government. In all humility, I have accepted the responsibility as Chief of the Army Staff. I wish to assure you that I have a duty towards my people, the officers, the junior commissioned officers, non-commissioned officers, other ranks, the veterans, the war widows, other widows. Then there are families, there are civilians who are working with us. I have a responsibility towards all of them, and I am conscious of this responsibility. Whereas as far as the 2 senior officers are concerned, who are senior to me, I would say I have rubbed shoulders with them, we've broken bread a number of times, we've grown up together. So I think we understand each other. And in the armed forces, or our training in the army is such that we don't work for individuals, we work for the organization.
Right.
I think possibly it is in that light that they have taken the decision to stay on, because it is not for me, it is for the benefit of the armed forces and to make sure that the army comes out stronger after this episode, that they have agreed to support me.
Right. So you mentioned the word veterans also just a few moments back. There is the 7th Central Pay Commission, and there was a sense that some of the veterans were not getting what they actually had sought, what they had actually wanted. And at one level, it was an issue of honor between, say, veterans and those in the forces versus vis-a-vis their civilian bureaucrats, civilian counterparts, I should say. How do you restore that sense of honor and pride which they seek?
Well, the veterans are very disciplined people. They are ex-army men who are expected to behave in a very disciplined manner. Well, there are some grievances that they have which the government is addressing. The OROP has been implemented actually. They have started getting their pensions in whatever they had to get. Most people appear to be satisfied. Maybe there is a small segment which still remains unsatisfied. But I think a lot has been done by the government, and I wouldn't like to comment much on this because our ministry is taking all issues under their guard, and they are trying to make sure that whatever little is to be done is done through a committee which has been established by them.
What about OROP itself, the fact that even now there would be protesters at Janpath? Is it time for them to stop?
My request to them would be to stop and call off the agitation. And we are veterans who've lived their life in uniform, and so I would honorably request them to call off the agitation and trust us. We will ensure that their welfare is looked after. As I mentioned, I have a concern for the veterans.
So the line of actual control is another area of big priority or of big concern for you. Yet we see instances every now and again of their soldiers coming to areas we claim as our own, and they would perhaps claim the same. In terms of a lasting solution, in order to maintain the peace along the line of actual control, is there any new step or any new measures which you believe need to be implemented?
You see, the problem along the line of actual control is because of the perceptions along the boundary. We have unsettled borders on our northern front, and the perceptions vary. So, there are occasions when you have transgression across the border by either sides, which sometimes leads to a standoff. I think we've got a very good mechanism of cooperation where we are able to meet at the lower levels. At the ground level, the commanders meet, the soldiers meet, and we are able to resolve any differences. We also have border personnel meetings which take place regularly between our brigade commanders. The purpose of the meeting is to ensure that rather than getting into confrontation, we engage with each other through cooperation, and I think it is working well.
All right, well, General Bipin Rawat, it's been an honor to speak to you. You have an enormous responsibility ahead of you. I'm sure that's something that you've been looking forward to for such a long period of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful speaking to you.
Thank you, sir.